we'll review.
Okay.
All right, so this is a variable again, right?
What does FOO actually means?
Foo is just the name of the variable, right?
So they
So
just
you
made
can
it
name
up?
it whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
These are expressions, basically. Yeah. So parentheses means precedence. You know what precedence means? So it'll add these two numbers first.
Yeah.
So if you put parentheses here and parentheses between
you
these two,
2 times 3 first.
Yeah, and then add 5, right?
Mm.
So basic operators, that's very simple. Plus, these are the incrementing and decrementing. String operations.
Plus I.
It's pre-increment, so it returns the value. This one, it returns the value of I first and then adds 1. So k will be 1 here, and then after that, after this statement,
it will
I
become
is going to
2
be equal
and
to
then
2.
just re-verify everything.
Yeah, it's just k equals to 2.
So this basically equal to I.
Yes.
Why do you need to put plus plus then?
No, so plus plus it means plus 1, right? So I is going to be 2.
Oh, so okay, so when I is 1, and then when J will become 2, and K will still be 1.
Right.
But after that, it will become 2.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so logic operators, or, and.
Yep.
Comparison. So this is returns binary, so returns like true or false. So we should always use triple equals or this, and try to never use this unless you know what
For specific
that you
reason.
yeah, because this is only truthy. This does not check the type. That's what we call truthy. And so truthy and falsy things. So if you use the double equals, 0 and 0 in quotes should be
also true.
Yeah. So, but if you use the triple equals, then they are not equal. Right? Yeah. So this first one and that first one. So all these, if they're truthy, they return true, and all these return false. So ternary operator should almost never use it. It's very shorthand and it's not readable. You should use the if statement instead. Switch cases. This is a way to abbreviate a switch case. Makes it a lot cleaner in the code. Not as
compared
much.
to if.
Yeah, switch cases.
When you have more than 2 cases.
Yeah, we don't use them as much because they're like using the break. If you don't use the break, then you could.
It's not gonna return.
Yeah, it's very
dangerous.
Easy to it's dangerous because you can make a mistake very easily. All right, loops. For loops, it has 3 statements: the initiation, the comparison, and the addition, the iteration. Yeah, the iteration. They don't always have to be there, so you can always put nothing in between and take care of it somewhere else. For loop is the most widely used. While loop is not as used as much because there's higher chances that you'll have an infinite loop.
Wait, let me think. How is that? Because
so if your conditional never gets reached, you'll be iterating over and over until the end of time.
For example, this one, if it's less than 100, it goes here, it adds up. This will end, right? This one will end. Because if it's greater than 100, it will return something.
That's correct. Alright, so do while loop. So do while does the first, it iterates first and then does the check. So it's a little bit different from the while. The while always checks first and then executes the code. The do while does the code once and then checks. Then it goes to the next time and checks. Next time it checks.
So when you start it, it will display this message, and then it will check if it's true or false.
Right.
To decide if it's gonna display something else again.
Right. So
the same message again.
Yeah. So it executes the block of code between the curly brackets, and then it'll do a check to see if it keeps iterating or it keeps going in the code. Breaking the loops. These are very interesting and nice to have. There's a break, which will break out of the loop. So it will continue with the code, not outside the curlies. It will stop. Continue will actually skip the rest of the code inside the curlies. And these are some reserved words. So you should never name your variables any of these unless you know what you're doing.
Because they have been taken by.
Yeah, if you rename them, actually, yeah, these are the ones that should never.
These are the function, the command name.
Yeah, and you can actually override them. So delete. So if you override delete, you'll never be able to delete. Unless you store in a different variable. So I think these ones you should just not overwrite, because you could make the whole application not work. Right? Arrays are just sequences of things, right? So it could be objects, strings, numbers, I guess undefined, just
anything
any
that
type,
doesn't have.
any type that JavaScript has.
So in that case, why do we want? Oh, but it's gonna take more memory or like places if you use array, right? Because it's a more type of code. Because
No.
Then why wouldn't you just use this? And why would you have to even classify like string and text and all those things?
So, for example, if you have a list of things, you can put them in an array. So they're very easy to iterate over. So you can go over the items in the array in a loop, in a for loop. So it makes it nice. You could store rows of records. You can store properties or different things, objects.
You can use array for anything.
Yeah.
Then why would you need other things?
Because you might want to reference to only one item. So you use the variable, right?
Oh, sometimes you want to choose.
Yeah, so you want to list sometimes, and sometimes you only one item. So objects are like, it's like a list of a key and a value. So the key is this, and the value is the second thing. Objects are usually wrapped in curly braces. You can access the value by the key. So for example, this is my object, and to access my name, you would use this notation with a dot. Object dot my name. So it will return Rebecca. You can also store functions, right? You can store functions, strings, true or false, booleans, any type.
Right? Wait, so the say hello is man-made?
Say hello is the key, and the value is a function.
Okay.
So you can say object dot say hello, and you call functions by using the parentheses.
Yeah.
And so you'll execute this line.
It will do hello.
Yeah.
But why did you identify the say hello key? Oh, you don't have to? Because like you know how here you say well my object. Oh, so you say
so
equal
you see
to.
The curly is enclosing the keys and values.
So this is where you first set the value.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And that's another key,
and that's another value. So my name is a key, and Rebecca is a value. It's a string value.
mm,
Should we try that in the console?
mm.
So I'm gonna press I think it's Control Shift I, Command Control I. Yeah, Command Control I on the Mac, and I think it's Control I in the PC.
Command Control R.
I. Alright, so I'm gonna go to the console tab, and I'm using Chrome, I guess. Firefox also has a console, and you can actually either use the native one, or you could also get Firebug. Firebug has its own console. Maybe we can look at Firebug later. All right, so let's create an object, right? So var, let's say my object.
You have to type my object, right?
Hmm?
You have to type my object, right,
Yeah.
to create an object.
So then I'm gonna say, let's say, so it's a type. Let's say my object is a car. So I'm gonna say car. I'm gonna say it's of type. Sedan. And it has let's say it has tires. And I'm gonna say yes, it has tires, right? So I'm gonna say true. Alright, so now I'm gonna finish it with a semicolon. Alright, so now if I wanna access the type of my car object dot type, and you see the Chrome actually tries to finish what you're typing and predicts what you're trying to type. Right. So I'm gonna say type, and it should return the string sedan, right? You call it my object. So
Oh. Oh, because
yeah, so
it should be
you should
consistent.
say my object dot type. All right. So now.
Oh, so this name, I name whatever I want.
Yeah.
Cause
So that's the variable name, right? So I started saying my object, but then I decided to call it car object.
Okay. Let me try. My object tires.
So let's say I changed cars, and now instead of having a sedan, I want to have a coupe. So I'm gonna change the type of my car. I'm gonna say, so now I'm gonna say car object type dot type equals in quotes coupe.
Does that override the previous one?
Yeah. So now if we try to access the type, so we can start saying car object dot type should return coupe. And if I say car object dot tires, should still return true because I never even touch it, right?
And mine doesn't return. My object type.
So JavaScript is case sensitive. So if you say type with the uppercase and type with the lowercase, it should be different.
Oh. Do you have to name my object like that? Is it like it's like small case and like a camera?
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. So in a lot of languages, there's this standard called camel case,
Yeah.
and basically, you use every word that is the first letter is uppercase, and usually, what we do is instances of objects start with lowercase, and classes start with uppercase. We'll look at classes later, maybe when we look at backbone.
This instance always start with like a lowercase and
Yeah,
then the
so we
second.
try to always start with lowercase and then the the first letter of every other, the rest of the words in uppercase.
He's not gonna. He has to turn on this too.
All right, so objects.
So, but it's just a rule. But does that mean if I do uppercase, it's not gonna work?
No, no, it's not. It's basically it's like a rule that we follow so that we know what it is.
Yeah.
So if I see it's lowercase, I usually mean it's a value, not a class, not something that will can produce other objects.
Yeah.
Right, so this is another object type that has numbers instead. Um, you can actually have keys with spaces on them. So let's say if we create a var, let's say computer object, and I'm naming it object just because I like to um, name my variables with the type they are, which is kind of nice. That way, when you see it later, you know it's an object, right? So I'm gonna say it has let's say I want a property called tire type, right? So to do spaces in the keys, you enclose them in quotes, either single quotes or double quotes.
So both works.
So uh, tire type, and I can say wide, right? And I could also say, so single quotes and double quotes are interchangeable, right? I can say, I can say tint. So single, double quotes again, tint, um, grade, and I'm gonna say 30. I'm gonna end it with a semicolon. So now I can say computer object dot. So now I can't say tire type, right? Because it has a space. And if there's a space, it's gonna try to look for um, it's gonna try to it might think it's a different statement. So what I do is I put bracket just as if it were an array, and I say tire type, right? So like that. So this is another way of accessing variables in an object. You can put them in quote in brackets.
Oh, so the difference is it adds the extra brackets
Yeah.
to the one that we had before.
Right. So and you lose that dot. So tire type now equals wide.
And you don't need to put the.
So let's say I'm looking at my car object, and I can also do with the quotes. I can say type, and that's gonna return, I guess, coupe.
Oh, so this is a more universal way to call different
We
values.
we prefer to use the dot notation instead of the bracket because it's safer.
How is that safer?
I guess you could always pass a variable in here, and if somebody is able to change the variable, then they can access anything on your object. So
People change things in the brackets.
yes, I mean I guess we can see that later on. It's just right now, it's more like I guess convention that people try to use it more because it's readable. You don't have to worry about closing the quotes, closing the brackets. It's more using the square
Easy.
brackets and the quotes is more wordy. You have
Yeah.
to type more than using just the period, right?
Yeah.
Alright. So functions. So functions, I guess I can read the definition here. Contains blocks of code that need to be executed repeatedly. Functions can take zero or more arguments. Can optionally return a value. Right. So function is like basically like an action, right? So a verb could be an action. So let's say you usually the name of your function is probably like an action. So you can say function that get function to be get milk, right?
So this is like something you can name as other things. You can name whatever you want.
Yeah.
Do you call this command? What is this called? This like var and this. What are
Those are
this
yes.
command or?
It's just I would say it's more like describing what it is, like a descriptor of what.
Because by default, when you call this in the JavaScript, it will know what are you trying to do.
Yeah, what to do with the rest of the line. So for example, let's say so right now I'm gonna make a function that prints out getting milk, right? Okay. All right, semicolon. I'm gonna break it down into multiple lines. That way it's easier to read. So, and this does not have to. This does not need to end in semicolon functions. Right. So whatever is in between the curly brackets, these are the curly brackets, I guess. Is the code that it gets executed when you call the get milk function. So the name of the function is get milk. Then here's where in between the parentheses
where are we?
where you.
We're talking about functions. Wow. Yeah.
So
teacher is very advanced.
So the whatever you put in the parentheses are the parameters, right? So if you wanted to say, okay, how many liters of milk?
3.
So we can say liters, right?
Oh, the parameters, not the number.
Right. So this function.
Hey, you're using Chrome
sorry,
and the Chrome
can
has.
you no interrupt, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So liters would be a variable, and you can actually you don't have to determine how many liters of milk. You can say, okay, when I decide to tell you is when I'm gonna tell you. So and then we can put it out in the console as well, right? So we'll say getting, and I'm gonna say. So I'm gonna say I'm getting however many we pass liters of milk. Right? So that I just define my function, and now I'm gonna say get milk, and I'm gonna say 2 liters, right? I'm gonna put a semicolon, and the way to execute functions is by putting up parentheses, right?
Yeah.
So and this is the parameter, which is the variable that is gonna get injected into the code that gets executed. Right, so it's gonna take my 2, it's gonna put it in the variable
Replace
liters.
the liters.
Yeah, and then anywhere in the code where it's used.
So you always use the plus sign when you want to type more than when you want to connect two words in the.
Yeah.
Does that only apply to console.log or applies to anything, even document.write?
Yeah.
Okay.
So ask why does it say undefined?
So I guess the question is why is it undefined? So undefined is the return value of the function, and it gets add it to the console here. So let's say we wanted to redefine the get milk function, and we're gonna return. Oh, we're gonna say return true, right? So then we're gonna say we did get the milk. All right. So then we say get milk, and this time we're gonna get 0.5 of a liter, 0.5 of a liter, right?
Mm.
All right, and it's gonna return. It's gonna do the console log, and then it's gonna tell me, okay, I did it, right? So now it says, so this is the console log, and this is the return value. So, and we can actually store that return value in a variable. So we can say var did do we have milk equals get milk 0.3 of a liter, right? Okay, so do we get milk? Now what's gonna happen is there's not gonna be that return value here. It's not gonna print that out into the console, but it's gonna store it in do we have milk variable. Okay, so do we get milk? Now if we try to say console log do we have milk? Now we want to see what the value is. Do we have milk? We do have milk. Sure.
So this is a new one that you identify when it
Right,
calls
a
do
new
we have
variable.
milk?
Yeah.
You will return.
And I set it to the value that gets returned by this function.
So it will return this one and then return true because you set it here.
Yeah.
Because
No,
this one.
because it returns true, right? So the return value gets set to the variable. Well, the variable gets set to the return value of the function. But that's because we're executing the function, right? So by using the parentheses and passing something, it's gonna execute the function.
Yeah, but this here instead of you type this one too, right? So if you type 0.3, it will say getting 0.3 milk, and this is
Right.
based on the console log. This one, and then continually it will say.
Right. So now what we can do is do something similar where instead of let's say return true, just return liters, right? Right. So now we define the get milk function as get liters, and then we're gonna execute that. Do we have milk again with 0.3? What do you think is gonna the do we have milk variable gonna have?
What would they return?
Yeah.
Do we have milk? It's gonna return. Let's see, where was the other one?
So you see here's the get milk. Right? So it's gonna return
The 0.3.
Yeah. 0.3. So that's a way of kind of moving stuff around. So your function could say, okay, convert liters to gallons, right? So let's say that hypothetically, let's define a function, right? And this is another way of defining functions, just storing them in a variable. So var liters to gallons, right? And it's gonna take, we're gonna say equals a function, and you don't have to name it, but it's nice if you name it. And we're gonna say it's gonna take in a parameter, and let's say, so liters to gallons, so it takes a liters, right? And it returns the value in gallons. So we're gonna say return And we're gonna make an assumption here. Let's say in our little world, 4 liters equals 1 gallon. So if we multiply the liters
Times 4.
times 4, and then that's what we return, right?
But then do you need to put not the word gallons, so it will return 4 gallons?
We probably want to know just the number, right? We could return a string saying 4 gallons. It's not as useful as returning the number because most likely you're gonna do other calculations with it.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're gonna store this function in this variable. Right? So now we're gonna say, okay, liters to gallons, and we're gonna say how many liters? Let's say 2 liters. How many gallons is that, right?
Mm.
So it returns 8.
Okay. So did you is this because we already named it before, or we just rename it? That's why.
No, we create a new function,
So,
right?
okay.
So the function takes in a value and then it returns that value times 4. Okay.
Oh yeah, then we used to place that one. Okay.
So this is a variable that gets set by this.
Mm.
So let's say if we have,
Oh yeah.
if we say, yeah, so, all right, and it can be more than one parameter, right? So you can say, let's create another function that takes liters to gallons. And let's say, let's call this to, I'm abbreviating because to string, I was gonna say to string, but to string is a keyword and we shouldn't use it. So I'm gonna say to str. And that's a common way to let's say that that's a boolean, right? So then if we do an if statement, if to str. So if we say I want to return the string value, right? Which means I want to say the number of liters and then I want to say gallons, or the number of gallons and then the word gallons. So I'm gonna do that. So if that's true, then I'm gonna say return again the same liters times 4. I'm gonna put this in a parentheses, and then I'm gonna say plus the string gallons, right? With a semicolon at the end. And I'm gonna put a space here, that way there's a space between the number and the gallons. Alright, and then I'm gonna say else. Alright. So if toString equals true, then return the gallons, right? Otherwise, just return me the number. Alright, so we're gonna call gallons to, and then we're gonna pass it true, right? So now the return value is a string with 8 gallons. If we say false, then it just returns 8. So what do you think will happen if we don't pass in anything?
It's gonna be true.
So
You say if you don't type true or false, right?
right. Do you think it's gonna be true?
Yeah.
So let's think about it. So if this is undefined, right? The toString. Let's go look back. So because I didn't pass it, it's gonna set it to undefined, right?
But it's defined it here, no?
Is
It's just you didn't call it.
so is this variable is undefined because you haven't set it.
Oh, so this is another way to define a variable by just calling it inside the brackets.
Right.
Let's
So
see.
now
If it's undefined, it's false.
yeah. So if it's undefined, it's gonna do false.
Yeah.
So it's gonna just print the number, right? All right. So let's try it out.
Okay.
Let's try it. So it did.
Okay, so you don't necessarily have to define it by do like a var and then to string equal to something.
No,
You
because
can also
pass
do
it
like
in,
this.
right? So it's kind of nice that you can actually have optional parameters, right?
You can do more than 2, right?
Yeah, you can do as many as you want.
Is there a specific? Because you see how all these are in purple, the words, because I think they are the program language,
Yep.
the key
The
language. Right?
language, yeah. So if you see return should be here. Return.
Yeah.
If should be here somewhere. If
Else.
and bar. Bound and else.
So when it's red, it's just like string.
That's just this
color.
application that colors codes it. So if you use another a text editor, it might not color it the same. It might color it different color, whatever.
Yeah, the color might be different, but the way that they kind of categorize it by color, right? I mean, because this color will be all the keywords that programming itself carries it,
Yeah.
and the red one. Does that mean? I mean, in other place it might be in different color, but this thing they have something in common.
Yeah.
Which is their text. That's I think it's hard coded.
Yes.
So when you see what display whatever you typed into it.
Yeah.
And the blue one will be the returned value, so it will change based on what that is.
So yeah, so functions are made for processing information, right? So you pass in information and then you want something else to return or something to change. So you want an action to happen. So declaring a function, which is like this, that's called declaring a function. Is kind of like writing it out, writing what the function should do. Then this is executing a function, right? So it's kind of saying, so this is kind of saying this is so run is a verb, right? So I'm saying running means walking really fast or walking fast and kind of jumping, right? And then I'm saying, and in this point I'm saying run for 2. So I'm actually saying do the action, and then maybe saying some like modifiers like an adjective saying run for 5 minutes or run fast, run slow, run to get some milk or something. So functions are like verbs. Function definitions are like verbs, and function execution is like performing the verb. So for example, here they use greet, right? So greet here, when you're defining the function greet, you're saying this is how you greet. So you basically have to know who you want to greet and what kind of greet you want to show, right? And then you're saying, okay, so when you tell me who the person is and how to greet it, I'm gonna greet you. So it's gonna take the 2, and then it's gonna do some processing, and then it's gonna return something. Right? So here is actually saying, okay, now that I told you how to greet, here, greet somebody. Alright, so I think time is up.
use a function inside the console log.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can nest. This is what is called nesting, right? You can nest functions.
And then the console log displays it in the
Right.
console.
So the console log is actually a function, right? Console is an object.
Oh.
Log is a function. And log function takes, at least in this case, is taking one parameter, whatever that this function returns.
Oh. So log is a function. Then document.write is a function too.
Right.
So I cannot use log or write anymore because it's been taken.
You shouldn't. You could, but you shouldn't.
I
So
see.
a lot of times what people do is overwrite the native functions, like log, console log. So for example, we do this a lot with older browsers.
Mm.
Older browsers don't have this. So what we do is define our own.
Mm.
And for example, let's say if you wanted to keep your logs in somewhere, you can actually redefine this to store it in your database or to send it to somebody to review something.
Does log mean store something, or what does that mean?
Log stands for, oh, I forgot.
LOG. You type LGO.
Oh. It's just an abbreviation of another word. I forgot what it is.
But the function, what it does is just display it.
Hmm?
So if I do document.log, does that display things
Yeah.
in the document?
That's fun. Yeah, basically it's just, I guess, no, it's not an abbreviation. A log is like a document that you keep. So I guess logs for ships is the document that they keep for where the ship was at a certain time. So it's like a record.
Okay, because I'm thinking about if console.log is not the whole thing, log
So
itself.
basically log is saying like keep a record, right?
Okay. So then,
Logging is keeping a record of something.
because
And
log,
console is this is what we call the console. It's just-
where you put it.
yeah.
So that means I can also put document.log. It will work too, because document was just where you
If
put
it was defined, yes, but it's not.
Oh, so this whole thing has been defined.
Right.
Because I saw log is
So
a native.
console is defined as an object that contains multiple methods, right?
Oh, you
So-
have to
and you
define
can
these
actually-
two together.
Right. So you can actually see console here. And then we put a dot, and then you can see debug, count, clear, assert, dir. And these are different methods to actually show.
What you can do with the
Right.
console.
So you can say warn. Wrong, but okay. So you'll see if I do this, it'll show a different. It'll show like a little warning. Not all the browsers implement this warn. Newer browsers implement more. It's just depending on the browser. So older browsers like IE6 don't have console log. So what we do is we define it if it's not defined. I think our time is up.
Yeah.
Right. We'll continue later.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
So, because I was originally thinking, so you're saying that other than define log, which is the function, and console, when we group things together, we need to define the whole group as well.
Yes, you can define it separately, but maybe that's a good question. We should write it down and review it next time.
Okay.
But yeah, you can define it. Usually, it's better to define as much as you know up front, and then you can define more stuff later.
I see. Okay.
And like for example, we redefined what was that? The type of card, right? Yeah, the type we defined it first, and then we changed our mind, right?
Yeah.
We said type equals scoop.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.